Hello, I'm Chris Fowler for College Sports Century. He was the golden child, a two-sport prodigy who, even by the standards of high school hyperbole, was one of the most heralded prep athletes of this generation. But what might have been never was. Injury and circumstance did to Ronald Curry what opponents never could. But unlike so many others whose promise is never fulfilled, he has not allowed it to crush him.
Ronald's first day at Hampton High School, he gets on the bus and the driver doesn't know who he is. And the driver says, "Hey, I'm going out tonight to see this new quarterback. Have you heard anything about him?" And Ronald just kind of shook his head and said no. And that was probably the last moment of anonymity that he ever had in this town.
He was the best quarterback I believe I'd ever seen in high school.
Curry across the middle, touchdown!
I remember going to his football games and, thousands of people there and games sold out. You can barely get in, and he's like the president. He's holding and kissing babies, taking pictures and stuff.
I think about Hampton, Virginia, and Ronald Curry was the man. He was the man. They had this other kid named Michael Vick playing elsewhere, and he was okay. But Ronald Curry was the man.
I had the opportunity to play against him in high school, and he was one of the best high school players to ever play the game. A great athlete, a great quarterback, a great person.
You could go around town and people say, "Oh, I knew Michael Vick was as good as Ronald Curry all along." Nonsense. It was not so. Ronald was the best football player you've ever seen.
In 4 seasons at Virginia's Hampton High School, Ronald Curry passed for 8,200 yards, rushed for another 3,300, and accounted for 186 touchdowns. But when the fall leaves had blown away, Curry took his talents inside.
As a high school basketball player, I thought he was one of the best players in the country.
Nobody could have handled him. He was so quick, and being 6'2", he was a big guard. He could go inside and rebound, and we wouldn't hesitate to post him up.
The closest comparison, both in terms of home state and skill set, is Allen Iverson.
Curry was going to be everything that Iverson was, and maybe a cleaned-up version of it.
Ronald, of course, was a point guard and a quarterback. Allen was a point guard and a quarterback. So fair or not, the comparisons were inevitable.
Averaging 22 points and 6 assists as a junior, Curry led Hampton to a state title. Then, as a senior, he earned National Player of the Year honors in basketball and football.
I loved high school. That's probably the best part of my life. People say college is where you never forget, but it's high school for me.
As his high school dream began to wind down, Curry was the coveted athlete in America.
My phone was ringing for like 3 days straight. Crazy.
I had not seen a player receive the two-sport attention that Ronald Curry received.
Everybody just looked thinking, well, this kid's a savior, and he can do it both on the hardwoods and he also can do it on the football field.
Charlie Ward was the analysis I was hearing a lot of times, utilizing that as the barometer that was established or set for Curry when he came out of high school.
Whatever success he had in high school didn't seem to go to his head. He was very popular among teachers, among classmates. When the best high school athlete in America wants to come to your school, you're not going to tell him no.
Weary of the college recruiting wars, Curry, who had narrowed the field to Virginia and North Carolina, indicated to his high school coach in September of 1997 that he wanted to stay close to home.
Mike Smith, the head coach at Hampton High School, called a few members of the media out to Hampton High onto the practice field and brought Ronald over and 2 of his teammates and said they have something to say.
Ronald had just made a decision. He is going to commit today verbally to the University of Virginia.
The state of Virginia was just dancing because Curry was going to go to UVA.
He was the most touted athlete this state has seen probably since Ralph Sampson.
We were surprised when Ronald was announced on ESPN
at a Virginia football game that he had committed to Virginia. Phil Ford called and talked to his high school coach, and he said that Ronald still wanted us to recruit him.
We just continued to recruit him under NCAA rules, the way that you are allowed to recruit young men. And I always just try to present what the University of North Carolina has to offer.
In March, the euphoria in the state of Virginia turned to disappointment when Curry changed his mind.
With the basketball program at Virginia, the school he'd committed to last September, in turmoil, and his other favorite on the way to the Final Four, guess where Ronald Curry's going? North Carolina.
It couldn't have been more ill times for Virginia because Jeff Jones, then the basketball coach there, was in a lot of trouble. And by the time April rolled around, Virginia was without a basketball coach. Now, Ronald was going to sign a football scholarship, but this was clearly going to be a basketball decision.
He would not have come to Carolina if it had not been for basketball first. At the same time, it was very important to him that he had the opportunity in football.
Carolina seemed like to be the better place, and they was top 5 in basketball and football, so it's like, where could you go wrong?
On his first trip to UVA as a Tar Heel, Curry felt the reaction of a state spurned by one of its own.
You hear the boos. Guess who's in the game? You can hear who's in the game.
They still haven't forgiven him in Charlottesville. Oh, the Virginia fans to this day are just angry as can be.
They booed his every move when he came in the game.
This is the kind of emotion down here because of Ronald Curry.
Love hurts, and I think that it hurt him that I didn't really go to UVA.
Soon enough, Curry began to realize that his career was not going to be all roses at Carolina, where love wasn't the only thing that hurt.
The first day of practice, Ronald Curry's on the field, football, and it's one of those typical suffocating, humid days in North Carolina, and all of a sudden you look up and here comes Bill Guthridge, Phil Ford, and Pat Sullivan in long-sleeve white shirts and ties, the basketball entourage coming out to pay respect to the new kid in town. Amazing.
Slated to be a punt returner and backup signal caller as a North Carolina freshman in 1998, Ronald Curry was thrust into the spotlight when quarterback Oscar Davenport was injured.
I'll never forget his freshman year at Wake Forest. He was running to his right and threw it on the run, 60 yards in the air on a dime to Bosley Allen. And everybody in the press box just kind of sat back and took a deep breath like, wow.
Certainly here at Carolina, he couldn't have lived up to expectations if he had walked across University late.
Curry's 1,400 total yards and 8 touchdowns helped Carolina rally from an 0-3 start. The Tar Heels finished the regular season 6-5 and won the Las Vegas Bowl. Curry took home offensive MVP honors.
He is going to have the first down and a lot more. Ronald Curry, touchdown, 48 yards.
But when he moved indoors, it became clear that Curry's vaunted basketball talents hadn't made it out of high school.
I saw Ronald Curry at the Nike All-America camp before his senior year of high school, and I thought, this is a pro basketball player. Next time I saw him, after he'd been with a football team for a year, totally different player, totally different body. He just didn't look like himself anymore, and you wondered if he would ever be a basketball player again.
Playing just 13 minutes a game, Curry shot under 25% and had difficulty running the offense.
All of a sudden he shows up on campus and we soon come to realize that he does not have a jump shot.
He contributed, but it was not what we had thought he probably would because he was so far behind when he came out.
As a freshman in basketball, you don't put him in some situations that our staff put him in. We probably brought him along a little too fast.
I didn't really dwell on my freshman year because I know it was like a year of learning, but I feel like I had to step it up for the years to come.
Although he showed flashes of brilliance the next football season, Curry had trouble finding consistency, throwing 7 more interceptions than touchdowns as the Tar Heels started 1-3. Then in the second quarter against Georgia Tech, he tore his Achilles tendon.
He tackled me, but it happened before he even hit me. So I can remember it feel like I twisted my ankle.
And at the moment, this doesn't look very good.
I just remember seeing people come out of the Carolina locker room at Georgia Tech when they knew what the injury was, and you could just tell something's up.
Curry missed the rest of the football campaign and all the basketball season. However deep his disappointment, the 20-year-old had already endured a far worse form of adversity. On May 28, 1979, Ronald Curry was born in Hampton, Virginia, to 16 and 14-year-old parents. When he was 7, his father was sentenced to life in prison for armed robbery and rape.
Ronald doesn't know all of the details of his father's incarceration, and at some point Ronald has said he will want to know.
The story came out headed into his junior year of football, and he was warned, you know, this story's going to be out there. If you really don't know and you don't want to know, don't read it.
Not that I didn't want to know, no, just the people I asked always directed me. If you want to know, ask your father. I'm sure I'll ask him one day.
I respect his decision on that, and if that's the way that he wants to play, everybody here in North Carolina respects that.
Curry's father is up for parole in December after 15 years in prison. Through occasional visits and correspondence, Curry maintains his dad is a changed man.
He's still a part of my life, and I still love him. You know, I wouldn't say love him like a father, but I still love him.
In his early years, Curry lived with his mother and grandmother. When he was in the 6th grade, his mother moved away to North Carolina, and Ronald elected to stay home. 4 years later, a stroke left his grandmother unable to care for him, and she placed him under the eye of her good friend, Lillian Crawford.
They call me Big Mama. All the children in the neighborhood, all Ronald's friends, all the children call me Big Mama.
She is one of God's angels. She has a spirit about her that you can't describe in words.
She was there for me when, you know, pretty much nobody else was.
As Curry struggled to gain his footing as a teenager, his cousin Jomel was shot and killed.
One night he was coming home from basketball practice, and a guy come up in a car. The guy asked him for some money. He said, man, I don't have no money. He said, I got gym shorts on. And the guy pulled out the gun and shot him in the head anyway.
One of his aunts called Ron and told him, and he just dropped the phone and just started crying and stuff, and he wouldn't stop, and like, he was just hysterical.
And I went and took him to my arms. I said, you know what? The Lord knows best, darling. And I said, you got to go on with your life.
Hit me hard. Didn't do nothing for days. And I can remember sitting in the bathtub for like, hours, just laying there, couldn't believe it happened. I have a picture of him pretty much everywhere. I have his name tattooed on my arm. No, I wear number 1 and number 22 because he wore number 1 and number 22.
When you see him knee down on his knee and he goes like this, he said that's Jamel looking at him. He done throw the touchdown for Jamel.
When you get to know Ronald Curry one-on-one and realize what he's been through in a lifetime, more than most of us have been through in 50 or 60 years of our life, you realize that you're dealing with a guy that is tough mentally as well as physically. He's been able to adjust, been able to adapt.
After a youth of such violence and deprivation, a torn Achilles heel might seem minor. But when and how well the Carolina sophomore would recover remained questionable.
I've made a decision. I'm not going to wear pants anymore.
In TV lingo, it's called a bridge show, and it's usually lame.
No pants! Trousers. No. Shorts. I'm going pants!
Larry here has an out. He has Ultimate TV, so he can watch something he's already recorded.
11 months after tearing his Achilles, Ronald Curry was back for his junior season as North Carolina's starting quarterback.
Got it, 15-10, touchdown Carolina.
One of Ronald's happiest moments would have to be returning to his first game after his injury. I think that he was just elated to be back on the field.
Draw for the second time to the first down and more. Ronald Curry, touchdown, North Carolina.
Curry passed for 2,300 yards and threw or ran for 17 touchdowns. But his team had problems as the coaching staff was in transition.
He had Steve Marshall, not a real good offensive coordinator for the Tar Heels. He's gone. Then they had Mike O'Kane. And now I'm going to play for Mike O'Kane, okay, and try to save Carl Torbush's job.
Carolina was besieged by injuries, besieged by lack of depth, and pretty much Curry was trying to air it out. Carolina had to resort to being a big play offense without a lot of big play weapons.
The offensive system wasn't working. They weren't winning. He didn't have a lot of support around him in regard to a running game or protection, and he got beat up.
I didn't really feel like I was back to maybe the last game. My Achilles was fine where I can be productive, but I didn't feel like I was in full stride until probably the end.
Nevertheless, Curry set 5 single-season school records during a 6-5 campaign. When he joined the basketball team, Curry was an overlooked candidate to fill the void at point guard created when Ed Coda's eligibility expired.
There was a lot of talk about who was going to fill Ed's shoes, and I wasn't even mentioned. That was more motivational than anything, knowing that I was a forgotten man. But Coach Doherty let me know that, you come out here, you compete.
Curry races it down, drives baseline, gives it to Peppers for the alley-oop dunk.
By North Carolina's 8th game, Curry was starting at the point. His improved assist-to-turnover ratio, combined with strong leadership and defense, helped extend a winning streak to 18 games.
He came in and where 2 freshmen were throwing it in the stands and turning it over and dribbling off their feet and took control.
Ronald was one of the best defenders on the basketball that I've been around. And offensively, he was like he is in football. A quarterback, he distributes the basketball.
His defense really set the tone for our defense. We had one of the best defenses in the country then. It really started with Ronald Curry.
In mid-February, North Carolina was #1 in the country. They had an 8-day layoff, went to Clemson, lost, and the personality of that team changed. Ronald Curry changed.
He certainly isn't an accomplished shooter because he hasn't had that repetition time after time. And I think the opponents took that away from him the second half of the year and wore him down physically, and it showed in the home stretch of the season.
The Tar Heels lost 5 of their last 10 games, including an upset by Penn State in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Soon, Curry decided to examine whether his 2-sport days were over.
He was going to be the superstar. He was going to be the guy. And he hasn't been able to fulfill that up to this point.
I can't believe he just lost all that talent. I just believe it's been hidden.
As Ronald Curry approached the summer of 2001, he struggled to find a single focus for his athletic gifts.
Here's a guy who came in believing that he was going to be an NBA player. Anybody who's watched him now has come to realize that Ronald Curry is not going to play in the NBA.
So many high school guys saw Charlie Ward do it back at Florida State in '93, and they think everybody can do it. Quit citing him. It only happens once in a lifetime.
It's a tremendous challenge for a youngster to be a leader on 2 high-level collegiate sports teams. Ronald is somebody who can do that up to a pretty high level. I'm not sure he could ever do it to the top level.
I think if he would have stuck in one sport, and that would have been football, he probably would have been in the same position I'm in today.
Would you be better in one sport than the other if you quit one of them? Sure. But if you love to do it, love to do both, then why?
Being away from basketball for so long, I can't really put myself in a position in basketball to have a really great season, a really breakout year, the year that you need to make it to the next level. I would love to play basketball, but kind of focusing on football. Hopefully football will be, my future.
But under a new head coach, John Bunting, and his 3rd offensive coordinator in 4 seasons, Curry got off to a rough start.
Sings this one, intercepted by Strain.
Curry committed 5 turnovers and was pulled in each contest as the Tar Heels started 0-3. Forced to share quarterbacking duties with redshirt freshman Darian Durant, Curry couldn't find his game.
I think his confidence is shaken because, #1, he is human. And maybe he forgot he was for a while. I don't know. You achieve so much.
In the dual quarterback role with Durant, Curry improved as the Tar Heels upset 6th-ranked Florida State.
Got him! Touchdown, Tar Heels!
When Ronald Curry plays a game against Florida State and helps be a significant part of the biggest win in the school's football history, it's got to be, in many ways, at least one satisfying moment in a few years of disappointing moments.
The FSU victory sparked a Carolina winning streak, during which Curry broke the school's career record with more than 5,500 total yards. He gained additional satisfaction by defeating Virginia for the first time in his football career.
30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, into the end zone, touchdown.
It was really unfair what happened to Ronald. He would have been a much better football player had the program been able to redshirt him his freshman year. And then, just at about the time things are really beginning to roll for him, he suffers the Achilles injury. Off the field, he was faced with so much adversity and so many obstacles, but at the same time, I don't believe I've ever encountered him on a day when he complained about it.
With his football performances falling short of expectations, Curry is considering a return to basketball. But through all the athletic disappointment, Ronald's priorities have remained in order. He's scheduled to graduate in May with a major in African American Studies.
Anyone who has not been in the shoes of Ronald really cannot begin to understand what his life has been like. People have a lot of opinions of what Ronald should be. But I think at this point in his life, he's everything that God would have him to be.
She keeps me going, keeps me smiling. There's more to life than the things that I'm going through, regardless of what I end up doing. I'd like to have a couple kids, a couple grandkids, just to live a long life.
Here's a kid whose dad was in prison, whose mom obviously had him young and then left him with his grandmother, and turned out to be so right, such a good, sweet kid. There's a lot to admire about that.
One of Ronald Curry's favorite images that he likes to speak about to describe his career is that he arrived in Chapel Hill on a pedestal, and that pedestal has gradually been chopped down inch by inch to the point where he's now just standing on the ground with everybody else.
Through all the turmoil, Stacey Jones has been a comfort and confidant for Ronald Curry, soothing his psyche and massaging his feet. One day she looked down to see that he tucked a love letter to her between the toes of one of his feet. On a toe of the other foot, there gleamed an engagement ring. She said yes. For College Sports Century, I'm Chris Fowler.